Hello, my name is Lamin Jai, and this is News Review. Coming up on the show today, President Adama Barrow has sworn in the new Minister of Youth and Sport, Bakari Baji, as well as new judiciary officials. We have a report on that. I also have my big guest today in Halifa Saleh. These and more coming up, but first we will quickly look at what the papers are saying. I have the Standard and the Point newspapers. We will see what the papers are reporting on today. So according to the Standard newspaper today, P.S. Banja, that's the Fisheries Permanent Secretary, rejects alleged bribery audio. Also on the Standard, Barrow is copying Jammeh's playbook in central bank interference. That's a quote apparently there by the former finance minister. Majority leader hits back at critics. GAP challenges Barrow to revisit Gambia, EU, China fishing agreements. Government urged to table disability bill. So according to the Standard, the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Fisheries and Water Resources, Dr. Bamba Banja, has strongly rejected any suggestions that he was the one in an audio widely believed to be his voice in a telephone conversation with an unnamed minister discussing an alleged bribery transaction. In the audio, a voice could be heard calling someone he referred to as minister, informing him that he was with these people who have given me $100,000 and that he had told them of the severity of their crime. In the same audio, the same voice could be heard explaining to another man that he had to share that money with the minister. The audio, which is widely spread on social media, was interpreted by many to be the voice of Mr. Banja allegedly receiving $100,000 from a fishing vessel which might have breached the law, and that he might have been talking with the minister. When contacted over the matter, thereby the Standard, but Mr. Banja said he was not in the one in the audio, adding that some people just use his voice in an attempt to discredit his reputation and good work. Barrow is copying Jammeh's playbook in central bank interference. Amadou Sane, a former minister of finance, has said that President Barrow's attempt to remove the governor of the Central Bank of the Gambia for reasons unexplained is an indication that he is following the footsteps of his predecessor to control the country's financial institutions. Majority leader hits back at critics. Majority leader and National Assembly member for Combo South has hit back at his opponents who accused him of inaction over the alleged environmental devastation by a Chinese fishing or fish meal factory in Gunjur. The Combo South district has remained in the media firestorm, with environmental activists condemning the continuous pollution by Golden Lead fish meal factory. Observers and critics of KK Barrow, the majority leader, said he has become unpopular for doing little or nothing about the issue. GAP challenges Barrow to revisit Gambia, EU, China fishing agreements. Musa Yali Usenu Bachili, the leader of the Gambia Action Party, has challenged the government to revisit Gambia's fishing agreements as fish scarcity hits the country. Government ought to table disability bill. The Secretary General of the Gambia Federation of the Disabled and Chairman of the National Organization for Disabled and Orphanage has renewed calls for the Gambia government to urgently push the disability bill to the National Assembly. That's Lamin Mane there. That's the Secretary General of the Gambia Federation of the Disabled and Chairman of the National Organization for the Disabled and Orphanage. So let's see what the point is saying now. That TAG warns opening airport alone won't bring tourists. COVID-19, Gambia registers no new case death. NCAC mourns demise of Stone Man. Gambia, Nigeria to increase trade volume. According to the point, Lian Sala, chairperson of Tourism and Travel Association of the Gambia, that's TAG, said in an interview with this medium that tourists coming to the destination Gambia, I think that's what they meant to say, have nothing to do with the airport opening, as everything have to do with how the Gambia as a country is dealing with COVID-19. COVID-19, Gambia registers no new case death. The 163rd National Situation Report since the confirmation of the first case of the novel coronavirus disease in the Gambia on 16 March has indicated no new recorded positive case. Well, their report today indicated that there have been 4 new cases. NCAC mourns demise of Stone Man. One of the names that would ever be remembered each time a toe is set at Wasu Stone Circle site and museum, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Wasu, CRR, is Pa Sanyang, famously called Stone Man. Popular Stone Man passed away last Wednesday. He was 63. Yes, I think that's all we have for you on the newspapers. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Thank you. So President Adama Barrow on Thursday revealed his government continues to intensify ongoing search for citizens that can contribute towards the strengthening of his government's governance structures and the realization of the national goals. The president made this statement while presiding over the swearing-in ceremony of the new Minister of Youth and Sports, but also the new judiciary officials. More in this report.
It would be recalled that His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Mr. Adama Barrow, acting upon the powers vested in him under Section 71(1) and 71(3) of the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, appoint Bakari Y. Baji as Minister of Youth and Sports.
I, Bakari Y. Baji, having been appointed as Minister of Youth and Sports of the Republic of the Gambia, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Republic of the Gambia, according to law, so help me God. I, Bakari Y. Baji, do swear that I will execute the functions of the Office of Minister of Youth and Sports of the Republic of the Gambia without fear or favor, affection or ill will, according to the Constitution and other laws of the Gambia. So help me God. I, Bakari Y. Baji, having been appointed as Minister of Youth and Sports of the Republic of the Gambia, do swear that I will not directly or indirectly reveal such matters as may be committed to my secrecy. So help me God. I stand before you deeply touched and inspired by the generous words of congratulations and encouragement that I have received since my appointment was announced on the 30th of September 2020. With enormous gratitude for the confidence placed in me by Your Excellency, and with the unwavering resolve to honor that trust, I humbly accept the appointment of Minister of Youth and Sports of our beloved country, the Gambia. I wish to immensely express my deepest respect and sincere appreciation and look forward to working closely and cooperatively with my cabinet colleagues and all other stakeholders in the executions of my functions. It is my considered view that today's realities requires the young people of this country to be identified by their skills, their intellect, their interests, and a healthy lifestyle, so as to actively participate in the public administration and the implementation of our national youth and sport policy with a view to attain the goals and objectives of the National Development Plan.
Gambia, Mr. Adama Barrow, acting on the powers vested in him under Section 138(4) of the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, 1997, appoint Justice Aoba, Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Idrissa Fafambai, Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Omar Momodu Musa Njai, President of the Court of Appeal. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Mr. Adama Barrow, acting on the powers vested in him under Section 143(3) of the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, 1997, appoint Asadu Jallo C. as Judicial Secretary. Mr. Adama Barrow, acting upon the powers vested in him under Section 164(1) of the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia, 1997, appoint Mr. Bakari K. Sanya as the Ombudsman of the Gambia.
Today, we are here for an order swearing-in ceremony. This time, it is for the positions of Supreme Court judges, President of the Court of Appeal, Judicial Secretary, the Ombudsman, and Minister of Youth and Sports. The event is part of the continuous search for Gambian citizens to join us in building our national institutions. The judiciary and the executive may be described as two parts of the same coin. They cannot be separated from each other. Yet, they operate independently to serve the interests of the nation. Therefore, my government continues to intensify the ongoing search for Gambian citizens who can contribute toward the strengthening of our governance structures and the realization of our national goals. The appointment of these Gambians as Supreme Court judges, President of the Court of Appeal, Judicial Secretary, Ombudsman, the Minister respectively, clearly shows that as Gambian citizens, we have a lot of work to do together in order to achieve our national objectives and targets through our various institutions. Credible institutions are not mere structures with furniture and equipment. Through systems that operate to serve the public. They are made functional by good character, intelligence, and expertise of the people who staff them. Thus, I encourage new appointees to commit themselves to improving on their individual performances and the output of their offices. Ladies and gentlemen, I must observe that today's ceremony is one that involves the appointments of different senior officials to very important positions. By taking the prescribed oaths of office, these personalities have publicly indicated their readiness to safeguard the trust entrusted to them and to devote themselves to national service in the best interests of the Gambia. My government will never lose sight of its pledge to undertake relevant institutional and legal reforms in accordance with global standards and best practice. The continuous review of our reform programs makes it necessary to set new goals for our institutions, review our laws and procedures, and continually improve output by creating and maintaining at all times a positive attitude toward work and nation building. Good governance cannot exist in the absence of the three arms of government, namely the executive, legislature, and judiciary. If one of them is absent or does not function well, it causes imbalance for the remaining two, while the executive and the legislature are influenced by politics. We should not lose sight of the national interests in whatever we do. We must not allow politics to overshadow our national interests or undermine our institutions. With this in mind, let us work together, for it is the surest way of building appropriate systems that work for all. Individuals may come and go, but the institutions stay. I am optimistic that we will continue to work in harmony for the realization of the ideals of our national constitution and the successful implementation of government policies and strategies as spelled out in the National Development Plan. As you take up your new appointments, ladies and gentlemen, remember that you are part of national structures that complement one another, and your decisions and actions in the course of executing your duties will have a bearing on the lives of Gambians. I urge you to be genuine, truthful, and reliable wherever you may be. On behalf of all Gambians, I congratulate you on your appointments and thank you for accepting to serve the nation in your various positions. We wish you success. We are one Gambia, one people, one nation. Together, we shall thrive. I thank you for your attention.
Watanbe, brought to you by AfriCell.
Be part of the amazing conversations with Gambia's greatest minds and personalities. Get ready to be entertained, inspired, and motivated on the Watanbe platform. Plus, stand a chance of winning the shopping of your life. Call or SMS 1010 for $3 is only to win cash prizes and a free shopping spree.
Join Watanbe live on GRTS and social media on Mondays and Fridays at 9 p.m. Kylie New Watan.
Where AfriCell goes, nobody dares to follow.
Hello there, my name is Lamin Jai, and welcome to this special interview with Honorable Halifa Sallah, the National Assembly member for Serekunda, but not just that, the Secretary General and party leader of PDOIS DAI. Honorable Sallah, thank you for accepting to speak to the Fata Network.
Thank you very much, and I'm part of the DAI leadership. We like to be called part of the leadership.
Part of the
DAI leadership.
Fair enough,
yes.
Sir. My very first question to you, you are an MP. You voted for the draft constitution bill. Why did you vote yes for the draft constitution bill?
Just as I did in 1996 to vote yes for 1997 constitution, even though there were things in it that were not necessarily the best provisions. I also supported the 2020 bill. Why? Because it has provisions superior to the 1997 constitution. The two-term limit is one of them. The 50 plus in terms of presidential candidature. The creation of a provision which clearly should have been a provision that we would put in the constitution because of the crisis it can create. For example, if a president dies, it is the vice president who comes into office for the rest of the term. If a vice president does not exist, it is the speaker who comes in for the rest of the term. Currently, that is what is in place. But the 2020 draft, which came as a bill, indicates that when the president dies, the vice president will be there for 90 days and then we'll go for election. When the vice president is not in place, the speaker will assume office for 90 days. If the speaker is not in place, the chief justice will assume office for 90 days, then we go for election. So on and on and on. So in that regard, comparing the 1997 and the bill, I was convinced that the bill was far superior to what exists now. That is why I voted yes, even though I am convinced that the whole Gambian nation knew that I predicted some element of contradiction in the manner we intended to proceed to have constitutional reform. Because knowing the text of 226, I had said in 2017 that it only provided for the changing of entrenched and non-entrenched clauses, and that the entrenched clauses could only be changed through a referendum, and the non-entrenched clauses could be changed by the National Assembly. And that had happened in changing the 65 years. So that is not theory, it is practice. So that was my conviction that that was the speediest way to be able to ensure constitutional reform, by virtue of the fact that I was still conceptualizing the 3-year time frame that we gave to the presidency as part of the transition.
So here's the thing, because this was the culmination, the draft constitution bill coming to the National Assembly was the culmination of a massive effort. But not just that, a promise, a campaign promise by the coalition that when they come into office, this is going to be one of the things that it will serve out. But what was, at the outset, what was the coalition really looking at? Was it to build a whole new constitution or to just amend the 1997 constitution, as you just talked about?
Well, the technicality is there, the intention is there. You know that law comes first with intention. A bill is an intention, and then you come with the technicalities of how to do it. I am convinced that what was intended is to create a constitution that will be far superior to the 1997 constitution, that will ensure that what is there that was not agreeable to the vast majority of people will be actually extracted, removed, and what was not there that is agreeable to the vast majority will actually be input. How to do it was a matter of technicality, and I believe that it would, if we had a real process which had no contradictions within the coalition members, it would have been a very smooth process where you will sit down with the technical experts, look at all the ways of doing it, and then find the best way, the smoothest way to do it. And I believe that the debate at the National Assembly revealed that the coalition had people, even if they had some divergent views on certain issues, would have been able to craft a way forward. And I was convinced that we intended to reform the 1997 Constitution. How was a matter of technicality that we could have easily resolved if we spoke with one voice and saw with the same eye.
So clearly your position was to just, you know, address some of the issues that were in the 1997 Constitution instead of embarking on this very cumbersome process of coming up with a brand new constitution different from that.
Well, you can have a brand new constitution by using the method of reforming through changing the entrenched clauses through referendum and the non-entrenched clauses through a parliamentary change of the law. All I saw was the technicality. I could see the technicality of what was there in the section 226, because a constitution cannot just be changed just like that. What happened in 1994 was the overthrow of the Republic and the suspension of the Constitution. So it was easy for somebody to say, let's overhaul the 1970 Constitution because power was in their hands. That is a different scenario in taking over power through the ballot box, where the Constitution enabled us to participate in election and also to be able to say to the Gambian population that on the 18th of January, if Jammeh does not go, he will be a rebel, because that is the provision of the Constitution. The mandate given to him would expire on the 18th. So you can predict that. So that is the supreme law. So if you come to power through the supreme law, you cannot overthrow that supreme law. I believe people could hear my argument in Parliament, that you cannot overthrow that supreme law. You cannot just set it aside and come up with a new draft. You have to rely on its provision as the supreme law in order to change it. And that was the technicality that I saw. And I believe it has become evident. But even though it has become evident, I still support that we could find a way of ensuring that we bring it about. That is a new technicality that comes into the fore. And I believe you've heard me in Parliament saying, well, the entrenched clauses would have to be changed through a referendum, and the non-entrenched clauses could be changed by the members of the National Assembly. They can touch it. And if they touch it, it means that it goes to the president for his assent. And if he receives the assent to it, then it goes to a referendum. So it means that if the president refuses to assent to any bill, which is passed by the National Assembly dealing with the non-entering clauses will still go to a referendum. So since referendum was the agenda, I looked at section 102 of the Constitution, and it was very clear that a bill could even be brought to the National Assembly with a provision indicating that it should go to a referendum. So it means that our dilemma is the draft Constitution has both the entering clauses touched and non-entering clauses touched. All are incorporated in one body. So how do you separate them and take this one to a referendum and then leave that with the National Assembly? That is the dilemma now. So the idea was that if we bring a bill that will indicate that that bill should allow for a referendum to be held to consider that issue, it means that we could still have the same effect of going to a referendum, but it requires that we all agree, both executive and National Assembly and all the National Assembly members. If we agree, we can find a way. The way is there.
The way is there. Now, here's the thing, because this effort costed the Gambian taxpayer over $100 million. It got to the National Assembly, the journey was brought to an agonizing end, if you like. Well, they are planning, there are plans, it would appear that they want to bring it back to ensure that it succeeds. But as Khalifa Saleh, the MP, what is your position on the fact that the bill was voted down?
Well, I believe that maybe not much consultation may have been done among the National Assembly members. You know, you cannot predict what people's positions would be. If I knew that people's positions would be what it became, most likely maybe I would have engaged the National Assembly members initially to find out their thinking, because I've had many of them say quite a number of things that if you look into the Constitution, you will discover that they may not have really fully grasped what is really there, because the 1997 Constitution contains provisions that are just lifted and put in the draft Constitution, because that was the idea. The idea was for them to review the 1997 Constitution, meaning that they could take anything from it which they are convinced should really be retained and remove what should be removed. And if you look at quite a number of the provisions that they were objecting to in the 2020 bill, if you turn back into the 1997 Constitution, you find out that it is an exact replica of what is there. So yes, that was objectionable to you, but by rejecting that, you are still there. So my conviction is that the misconception could have been cleared if people are grounded in parliamentary procedures. You see, the parliamentary procedure is this. When a bill comes in, the first reading, the introduction. Second reading, you discuss the merits. Even though people were looking at the details, we should have really concentrated on the merits, the purpose for the bill. Do we agree with the purpose of having a constitution? And any Gambian you ask, they will say, yes, we want a third republic. But how can you have a third republic without a third republican constitution? So it means that to have a third republic, you have to have a third republican constitution. Now, what should that constitution contain? That is the debate. So if you have some objections, and the parliamentary procedure is this, that vote we took was on the merits and purpose. If we agreed 3/4 that yes, let's allow it to be submitted to the next stage. And what is the next stage? When a bill goes through the second stage, it goes to the Assembly Business Committee, and the Assembly Business Committee will remit it to a committee of the National Assembly. Since it is a constitution, then it would have been remitted to the committee of the whole assembly. It means that then that committee has authority under our standing orders to invite anybody, including the CRC, subject matter specialists, experts, foreign or domestic. They could invite anybody to appear, and then we are going to review that bill clause by clause. That is what Standing Order 69 says. We look into the detail, no longer a debate on merit, but the detail clause by clause. Can you imagine if we exercise that power given to us? For the first time, 1997, because there was no National Assembly to review a constitution. The government overthrew the republic, and it became the executive, legislative and executive at the same time. There was no assembly. This is the first time in Gambian history a constitution was brought to a National Assembly for enactment. And this was the best opportunity we had, clause by clause, for the whole nation to cover, to know the details. This would have been the best form of civic education in our history, so that everybody will hear what each clause means. And if you have objections, this is where it could have come. And therefore, every National Assembly member could have questioned all the details that you disapprove and listen to the experts to talk, listen to National Assembly members also who have the capacity to grasp the content of Constitution also to talk, so that we can convince each other. That is what we fail to do. And I think that is really what is not acceptable to me.
So are you in any way suggesting or insinuating that those MPs, your colleague MPs that voted against the draft constitution, this is what they didn't understand and hastily went ahead to ensure its failure? You may even understand it and just feel that this is not the thing that you would want to support. And parliamentary tactics sometimes, you understand, but you just simply would not want such a thing to pass, so you just make sure that it does not pass. So one cannot explain why. I cannot read their minds. I think each of them could be consulted why they did not allow this process to take place, because if we move to that committee stage and then we must go back to report to the whole plenary, then you move towards the third stage of actually approving it, the bill itself, and you could have rejected it at that time. The CRC, what do you make of their role? Do you think they did a good job? Because a lot of people, especially those that really are not impressed by this work, what they think is that it was a waste of time, a waste of resources, and they came up with a document that really, didn't capture the wishes and aspirations of a very important section of Gambian society, if you like. Well, if I ask most Gambians today, do you want a term limit? Many of them will say, yes, we would want it. But the way and manner it was done, that is what some of your colleague MPs had reservations about. The fact that they made it retroactively by ensuring that the president would be able to have only one 5-year term under the new constitution. But those were issues that you can allow the commission to explain at the committee stage, and then make up your mind or make proposals. So there were so many options that people may not even know, because that's what knowledge base is all about. You can say, well, I want to teach because there was a debate. Can you touch it? Can you? Well, all that would have been clear. So my position is that whatever was disagreeable to anybody, you had an opportunity to interrogate the CRC so that they tell you why that was there. And then you'll be able to make up your mind based on the information you receive. That's what we deprived ourselves of, to be able to have explanation from those people who did the draft so that you can make up your mind. So you cannot pass judgment unless you actually went through the process. So there is absolutely no doubt that what we have is a draft constitution transformed into a bill. What was the original objective was for the CRC to look at the 1997 constitution, look at the principles of constitution making in a sovereign republic. They should take into consideration the sovereignty of the republic, the sovereignty of the people, having electoral processes where all governments will be determined by the consent of the people, ensuring accountability. So all those principles you have to weigh. You cannot just pass judgment whether they have done right or wrong. You have to look at the content
to see whether it achieved all those checks and balances. Many things that you hear people say, the president has been disempowered, the justice system, the judiciary has been given extra power. So you have to gauge all that, because you have checks and balances in any system. And very interestingly, if you look at the 1997 Constitution, look at the powers. Why would the National Assembly have the power to deprive a person from being ombudsman after being appointed by the president? What power did we rely on? 1997 Constitution, but people were calling this constitution a soldier's constitution. But look at the immense powers that all ministers, when we sit in committee level, we sit as a high court. No minister, nobody dares, and I'm emphasizing that word, dares to pay deaf ear to an invitation by the National Assembly to appear before its committee.
That will be contempt.
So those powers are in the 1997 Constitution. But some people were calling it soldier's constitution. You see, when we politicize things, we do not understand content, and therefore, as citizens of a republic, that becomes disastrous. Look at chapter 1 of the Constitution. It is saying that sovereignty resides in you and me, and all authority must be derived from you and me. That is a might that the people have, that we have always thrown in the dustbin as if we are nobody. Okay. So it is important, therefore, to say that we cannot judge the commission because we have not done what we were supposed to do. If we had given ourselves the opportunity after the second reading to go to the committee level and gauge the provisions clause by clause, and we discover that 99% of what they gave us was just trash, disagreeable to the vast majority, well, then we can judge the commission that you have done a bad job. But if we come and say, well, 99% was okay, then what do we do with the 10%? That is the duty of the National Assembly. It's no longer the duty of the commission. A product has been given to you. You are supposed to scrutinize it, consider it. Well, what do you do with it? It is the National Assembly then that must determine what it must do. And with the executive, this is where the discussion could have come. What could we do for this to go to a referendum? So I believe that the process has been derailed at the wrong time, and we cannot really pass judgment based on the information that we now have.
But then the debate spanned 3 days. You were there when some of these MPs were relying on some of these arguments, which culminated in them voting against the draft bill. But let's talk about one of the thorny issues, which has to do with the term limit, retroactively condemning President Barrow to just one term under the new constitution. Some of the MPs, what they advanced was that is illegal. In your opinion, do you think they are right at all to say that no citizen should be stopped, should be denied his or her right to vie for 2 terms under the new constitution? The law should not be retroactive.
You see, there is argument based on convenience and argument based on fact. Here, people are to make up their minds and form an opinion. So you cannot force them to accept what is disagreeable to them. So we must understand that it is not my duty to convince a National Assembly member to say that what is put there in the Constitution, that the term that the person has already served will count in determining a 2-year term, and they say they don't agree with it. Who am I to say I'm going to convince them? They will not accept. And those are issues that we could have discussed at the level of committee. But if you're asking me for my own opinion,
in terms of whether it is lawful or not unlawful.
Well, that we have to go to the Supreme Court to decide, to establish. But now we are just talking about opinion, an opinion that I can defend anywhere. And what they are relying on, and I'm not arguing with them, I'm just explaining a position. I am saying that if you look at Section 100, it says that you cannot pass a bill, that is National Assembly, that declares Gambia as a party state or a state based on a particular religion. Then it goes further, you cannot also pass a bill that deprives a person of a right that the person has already acquired. You cannot prepare a law that deprives a person of a right that the person acquired already, or to make a court case be reversed by coming up with that law again. So, but if you look at the end of 100, save those conditions, it says that you can pass a law retroactively. Save the conditions it establishes. Go back to section 100. It says that save those conditions, you can pass a law retroactively. So passing a law retroactively is part of the Constitution, but save what is put there. So now you have to make a legal argument. Is standing for election an acquired right? You know, those are issues that we can debate on. For me,
what is your position?
Yes, I'm saying for me, it is so immaterial that I would not think anybody who deals with the coalition agenda would even entertain such a debate. Because the coalition agenda was for a person to serve 3 years. That was the coalition agenda.
That was the deal.
Because the objective was a transition where we all singly agree to a common objective, that we want to give Gambia a new start. That was the objective. For me, in my mind, the bottom of my heart, I was convinced that we were removing Jammeh, 30 years of Jawara, 22 years of Jammeh, and we were going to be a model in the world by having a president who has acquired a right to serve for 5 years. That's an acquired right. That's why you cannot deprive him of that. But voluntarily, based on common consent, the person has agreed to serve for 3 years, and 3 years will resign from that position. Before that resignation, we would have worked together to come up with a new constitution, new institutions, etc., so that we'll create a level ground for multi-party contest after the 3 years, and anybody who is selected would be the unalloyed leader of the Gambia for a period of 5 years, and then second term, 5 years, and all that would have been entrenched in the Constitution. That is what I assumed. So if we in 2020 were dealing with an issue which was no longer based on what we conceive, then it's a new reality. But if it was the old reality, there would not be a debate. I will say, obviously, 3 years is what we agreed. So that would not even arise. The reason why all those arguments arose at the National Assembly is because the coalition agenda is in tatters. We've moved from a 3-year agenda, for the person insisted on serving his acquired right of being a president for 5 years. Not only that, is now hoping, after establishing a political party, to participate again in elections. So that is left to that person to really sit down and think that what is the change all about? And where is the departure from the past? If the departure from the past is 2016, then it means that a person who comes after 2016 to serve as the President of the Republic will always serve 2 terms. So that person, looking at that particular decision, that let's make sure that Gambia has a new start from 2016, may not object to serve a 2-term after unraveling or rolling back the coalition agenda of a 3-year term. So in that sense, I think all that is left again to the person who is in office, and is left to the National Assembly members, because they are the lawmakers, and to any form of discussion and arrangement to be able to see what we could do with the Constitution so that it goes to a referendum. All that could have been part of the debate and negotiation. So for me, rejecting it just on the basis of that ground, without entertaining the possibility of review and even reaching a consensus on some of those issues, is clearly not showing proper leadership.
Proper leadership. But as someone who has been there since at the outset, a lot of people credit Halifa Sallah as the brain behind the coalition. All these problems that are happening now, in retrospect, did you see anything like this? That this very beautiful idea, this is how it is going to turn out?
Well, obviously, after we started building up the architecture of a state, a cabinet, well, you can see the cabinet composition and the way it went. If you look at the coalition agenda, the president would have really engaged more with a team that you call a coalition in order to make decisions. But from the very beginning, even the coalition members themselves would entertain a president calling you and offer you a ministerial post.
And you jump at it.
So you see, when you look at it, from my perspective, well, from day one, when we started constituting a government, we moved away from the coalition agenda. And when we went into the National Assembly, because the National Assembly is an oversight institution, it is not supposed to be under the dictate of the executive. And the idea was to create an independent National Assembly that will accompany the executive through checks and balances to ensure that the institutions of the state and the instruments are properly crafted. That was the idea. But you can see when we came to National Assembly election, well, again, it's partisan, and people were seeing how many seats you are going to have in the National Assembly. So the whole idea of coalition, its instruments, its institution, its reform agenda was not to the fore. So in that regard, we cannot say that what happened in 2016 should not have happened, or if we were to go back again, one will have any regret, because what happened in 2016 is the most important development in Gambian history. Why? Because the first development to move from colonialism to a republic was something that we simply inherited constitutions given to us. And we were all fighting a colonial order. But in 2016, whilst there we were fighting a colonial order without real consciousness of the sovereignty of the Gambian person and the power of the Gambian voter, in 2016, the Gambian voter went and changed the country through the ballot box. And for the first time, we can now draw the lesson that had always been dismissed, that change can come through the ballot box. People always felt that you can never bring about change through the ballot box. That happened in 2016, asserting that power is really in the hands of the people. I believe that is the lesson that we must learn. What to construct to accompany that power, that's what we are engaged in now. And I must say, the most important aspect of that change, which is constitutional transformation, seems to be in dim prospect at the moment. But if all of us alert our minds as to what history will write, I think we'll quickly catch up and see that we cannot fail this process. We must really see that it is a process that all of us must revisit again and ensure that we achieve it.
And one thing also that happened has to do with the fact that all these aberrations, while they were taking place, Halifa Sallah was never part of it, was not there. From day one, it would appear you had this prophetic prediction that this was what is going to happen. The president offered you to take a job, to take a ministerial role. You declined. He even in an interview said that both you and Honorable Sidia Jata were all invited to come and serve your nation, because the president relied on you a lot when this whole project, coalition 2016 project was going on. He relied on you. many, many times I would hear the president say, these are my generals. He would look back and glance at you and look at you and say, these are my generals. These are the people that are going to help you. And then the opportunity came. The day came when the president invited you to come and help him, to support him, to make sure that he doesn't stray. But you didn't take it.
Well, that was the criticism that I received throughout immediately after cabinets were formed. Well, it was not so simple. And clearly, President Barrow and Khalifa Saleh knew exactly the basis of their relationship. When the coalition met and selected him, I was also a candidate. I could have started making statements that this is not fair. There were some conspiracies here and there. But I think what was more important to me is the realization that if we did not build something that will effect change, the type of Gambia we were going to have will be rough for me and rough for everybody else. Today, even though the APRC has been removed, but they can hold their press conferences, they can denounce what is happening, they can really take positions in the National Assembly. Their sovereignty resides in them and in all parties that exist in the country. But I could imagine what the situation was just before the 2016 elections. Gambia was burning. All the knives were gone. All the cutlasses were gone. The country was steadily moving into insults based on ethno-linguistic differences, regional differences, and the tension, the frustration, and one could have just imagined what would have been the aftermath. So for me, it was not about elections and politics and winning an election. It was about saving a country. That was really my spirit. And consequently then, when President Barrow turned to the coalition members and they asked him, well, first of all, we said who was going to be the spokesperson of the president after he was elected, after he was selected as the candidate. The coalition felt that I should be this coalition spokesperson, therefore I should also be his spokesperson. I said no. He should be us. Who will be his spokesperson? He turned around and said, I should be his spokesperson. That was the contract. I was the spokesperson of a candidate. And I had to kill my own person and live in him, as it were. How would he think? What would the best situation for him? And what advice should I give him that will be agreeable to him and that will not mislead him? That was our contract.
A contract which you were fired by my party at some point.
Well, that was just a joke in a way.
Was it a joke? But my party was very serious when he said,
well, he said it, but you see, these are all young people that I have brushed shoulders with, and I know them. I know, at that material time, the interests were surfacing, but I showed no interest. I was more powerful than many people at that time because I was closer to the person who controlled state power. So I could have used the strings, etc.
But the time my father was firing you, he was the one who was with President Barrow in Senegal.
No,
while you were in Gambia.
Well, in Gambia, I was in control of your country. I hope that, wait for my book.
Oh, you're writing a book?
You will see so many things that at that material time, maybe this will make interesting discussion. You see, when President Barrow was there, I was here. Nobody in the cabinet that was formed afterwards would know what was happening here. Only two people knew what was happening here. And you must bear in mind that the situation was most critical because Jammeh was still here when he was being sworn in Senegal. I was his spokesperson. I think I was more under fire than anybody else, that he has sworn in as president. That should have been treasonable if Jammeh was confident that he was president of the Gambia. But you see, the Gambian Armed Forces, security forces, had already accepted President Barrow's presidency. And failing to do so would have meant war for the Gambia, because ECOWAS was at the outskirts. And there were possibilities.
Was a lot of saber rattling everywhere.
So essentially, the ECOWAS did not know what was internal. And they here in the country did not know what ECOWAS was really ready to do. But it was not negotiable for President Barrow not to be brought in the Gambia to become the president of the Gambia. That was not negotiable. It's supported by the UN Security Council and everybody. And certain foreign powers were already in the country, studying the whole situation in order to know whether arms is the only way to solve the problem or there were other alternatives. And clearly, the thinking at that time was that a dictator has never been removed from power peacefully. That was the mindset of all those who were involved in the process of bringing President Barrow back. So the fact that Jammeh went in peace, and not only that, economic forces had to come into the Gambia, and they could have come by force. And you can imagine the disintegration of the Gambia National Army at that time, with Casamas at our back, with all these weapons in their hands, and they know their terrain. Can you imagine the type of war that would have taken place in the country? Can you imagine if Jammeh stayed, and then there is air attack where he was, at the State House, close to the hospital, with Banjul as it is? Can you imagine bombardment of Banjul, what it would have meant? And it would have been catastrophic. And the bunkers that were there. So you see, Gambians don't know what was the reality at that time. Sometimes I also believe they knew, because everybody was in their homes. Nobody was in the street. This country was as quiet as a doornail. I guess people just tend to forget.
Now, back to the question.
Yeah.
Why didn't you, because this was about Project Save the Gambia. This was about saving the Gambia.
Yes.
And your participation was very key in this.
Yes.
The moment came when you were handed the opportunity for you to continue saving the country. You turned it down.
Okay, so looking at the change that happened until he came to the country and assumed the mantle of the presidency in the Gambia, this is where he became an executive president. And
what do you mean by that?
Yes, under the Constitution, executive power resides in the president. It does not reside in a coalition. So it is now the president who must accept whatever follows from there. Looking at the beginning process at that time, I was convinced that if we were sincere with the agenda of transformation, two institutions are indispensable: the executive and the legislature. And I saw that my presence in that legislature would have served the basis of guiding the process of oversight, legislative oversight, as well as lawmaking, to be able to build the institutions and instruments that were necessary for the achievement of the objectives of the coalition.
So this came the very day that the president approached you with this offer of...
Before, I'm saying that, those ideas, President Barrow has never seen in me any desire to seek something from him, and that was deliberate. Because if somebody selects you as a spokesperson and you show interest, then he starts calculating what is your interest. And there will always be a gap. So to avoid that gap, I had no interest, zero interest. I was there just to serve. And that is why I have earned his trust, because I was there just to serve, to make sure that things happen. And in the process of seeing that things were happening, I could also see the changes that were occurring. And ultimately, at that period, I could see, if you talk to the coalition members, when we were negotiating as to how to relate with the executive as a coalition, and the impasses that were created, my statement at the end was always, well, even if it stops here, for me, the aims has been achieved, in the sense that we have given Gambia a change that never happened, a change that will make every Gambian to know power lies in his or her hands. Constantly I told them that, because I could see the trend going. And they will ask any of them that any time we sat down to negotiate the coalition relation with the president, at the end of all those meetings, I will mention that. Why? Because it became clear that we were all there together as a coalition, but we cannot possibly share the same interests at all times. And therefore, for the presidency selecting me, maybe then if I had any interest, then it's the vice presidency that I should have insisted that the president should give me.
In fact, that is one of the claims that
But I remember the president telling somebody that, well, here is a man who has done all these things, but he has never asked me for anything. He was telling that to someone, right in my eyes. I said, no, it's a different scenario. So I believe that I had played my role the way I should play it, and the next agenda was Gambia, and the way that Gambia should have moved required me to be in the National Assembly and not be in the executive.
The two claims that were out there, one you preempted it, has to do with the fact that, okay, Halifa wanted to serve as vice president, and the president didn't give him that role, and then he felt disappointed. But not just that, the other claim that was always out there was the fact that Dabo came out of jail and returned to his foster father role to President Barrow, and Halifa felt lonely, started despairing, and as a result, I mean, some would even say Halifa and Dabo do not see eye to eye. They cannot operate in the same room. So Halifa decided to...
Well, you know, people will say so many different things. I think Mr. Dabo, the same thing with the president, would recall the day that Jammeh indicated that he was no longer accepting the elections, and that the elections were null and void. And the whole coalition had to meet in the incoming president's home to really discuss on the way forward. I think all my colleagues embraced me, and there was tremendous respect, tremendous love, and tremendous faith in the resolution to find a way. And I think I've always said things that became agreeable to them and move things forward. Well, that is why ultimately, up to the end, I was speaking and answering to Jammeh's claims, and I'm sure people will remember that immediately when Jammeh decided to accept the results of the elections, I was the one who was called by Bala Jahumpa, and that Jammeh wants to talk to President, the person whom he believed won the election at that time, Adama Barrow. And I contacted Barrow and told him that, well, Jammeh wants to call you, so be ready and keep the line open. And we all heard what Jammeh said. And thereafter, I had to contact the president again, the president-elect, and indicate that we are faced with a crisis. Our people expect that we are going to the State House tomorrow, since Jammeh has accepted the results of the elections. And that is not going to happen, because this is what the Constitution says. So what do we do in the interim? And the first decision we agreed is that, well, what we can do to pacify our supporters is for them to know that power is in our hands, is to really negotiate with Jammeh for the release of Mr. Dabo and all those who were considered political prisoners. And of course, I contacted Bala Jahumpa and said that, well, since we are starting the negotiation in terms of transferring, power, and it will take this period, would it not be prudent for you immediately to grant a prerogative of mercy to those people who were political president. And he said, well, let me speak to Jammeh. And he spoke to Jammeh and came back to me and said, yes, we have agreed, we'll do that. So immediately we'll start the process. That's how it started. And of course, they went to court and requested for bail, and I'm sure the bail must have been very smooth, because the state will in fact be, we want to grant you something and you're asking for bail. So I think everything...
And Mr. Dabo was part of those people.
Well, that's why I say Mr. Dabo was the key person who made us to agree that when we say the political prisoners is basically him and all those people who are incarcerated with him. And we accepted and we moved. But Mr. Dabo will tell you that when Jammeh reneged the position, they were more in danger than anybody else at that material time. So in actual fact, there is a side of Gambian history that I don't think is fair for me to narrate at the moment, because it gives a hero's image of a process that was a collective process. But if people force me into the details, I will give the details. And the details will only continue to propagate the individuality of a process. But I think individuals must play a role, but collectively we must anchor our actions on something that each person contributes to the common fold. So in actual fact, to address
the claim that
to address the there is no personal issue between me and Mr. Dabo.
How about interest issue?
Well, interest is not about me. For me, if I put it, him going and the people select him to be president of a republic, it's like Mr. President Bauer doing the same thing, anybody doing the same thing. Whoever is the president of the republic is the president of the republic. So people must contest elections and they must have differences and opinions about all sorts of things, but that does not lead to animosity, that you want that person to die and suffer in prison. And so I do not see interest to be necessarily antagonistic. And I don't have any antagonistic relation with anybody, but we will struggle on values, we will struggle on principles.
But can Honorable Halifa Sallah and Honorable Ousainou Darboe operate in one single room?
We have done so.
But clearly the NAD project, we've seen what happened.
Well, you said, you see what happened. Well, that's what happened, but we've done so to build NAD. We've done so to handle the impasse.
No, the impasse, he was not around. He was in jail.
No, the impasse, he was out. He was our first action after Jammeh conceded defeat is to ensure that he comes out of jail. And we worked together during that period. That's what I'm telling you. We worked together, we worked with all of them during that period.
Would Honorable Halifa Sallah entertain the idea of Jammeh returning to the country?
You see, these are issues that we definitely are over-exaggerating. There is nothing that prevents Jammeh from coming to the Gambia. That no Gambian, that's in your constitution, that no Gambian can be prevented from not coming into the Gambia or leaving the Gambia. That's a constitutional provision. What has Jammeh done for him to be able to leave? And what may prevent him from coming to the Gambia? That you should ask me. What is being done now? What information has been received? Is he comfortable in coming to the Gambia with such information? That is left for Jammeh to decide. It's not for me. Jammeh is like you and me. He is a citizen of the Gambia with right to come and leave the Gambia. But you may also wish not to come to the Gambia because of certain issues. You may wish to come to because of certain issues. So that is left to Jammeh. And I don't think people should continue to give the impression that anybody has power to do this or do that regarding a citizen. That's my opinion. I don't think that is really fair for anybody to say this or that about a particular citizen. Let's talk about what he has done and how to handle what he has done. And the commissions are working.
Let's go
They've
back.
already seized all his properties. Those are all commission activities that have taken place.
Now let's return to the draft constitution. It has
The same thing with the Jawara. You can see eventually his properties and properties of PPP, etc. Well, these are political transitions.
Okay, now let's go back to the draft constitution. It has found that. And what do you make of the way forward now? What do you think should be done? Because there are two things now that are being banded. The one has to do with, okay, now it's all over. Maybe some other time we can think about bringing this draft, but it's all over. There is not much time. Elections is looming and looming large. Now we are left with the 1997 constitution. But you have others who say, no, in fact, this thing can be brought back again. And I've even heard the Justice Minister say there are plans afoot to ensuring that the draft constitution is returned to the National Assembly. What do you make of those things?
Well, you see, we have to look at things on the basis of law. A bill has been brought. It is rejected. Could you bring a bill back? Could you bring it in a different form? Well, these are all issues that the Attorney General need to be asked, because he must be looking at his laws. I have looked at our standing orders. I've questioned the Vice President. I've also questioned the Attorney General. That you talked about the Third Republic. What is stopping you then in bringing back a Third Republican Constitution, a bill dealing with a Third Republican Constitution for consideration? Are you going to oust that objective, or are you going to rely on it again? And what they said is that they will go back and consult and they'll come back to us. I'm waiting for that. But if you ask me whether we can have a second process, I said yes. Do we have that in the standing orders? Well, I have looked at it, and I believe I personally can look at a way that I can tell Parliament to proceed to be able to achieve the
You mean you have an argument?
Well, I have an argument.
And a strong one at that?
It's very strong indeed.
Okay. Now, here is what the Justice Minister is also saying. Something that a lot of, I've seen people talk about it, and they're really confused as to how that is really going to happen, because the law mandates only the CRC to serve as the independent body to work on the draft constitution. Now the government, through the Justice Minister, is saying they are trying to come up with an independent body. What body is this? I don't have any idea. But they are saying that they are working on an independent body that is different from the CRC, because what the government clearly has concluded is the fact that there was this lack of consensus. This is why the bill failed. What do you make of that? The fact that the government is thinking or pondering on getting an independent body different from the CRC,
you see,
to spearhead the return to Parliament.
We should always have the mind of the rule of law. Once we have that at the fore, then we cannot have errors. The rule of law principle is that whatever you do must be based on law. The CREC is based on an act, and they were given a mandate. And the mandate is to provide a draft constitution to the President and publish it in the Gazette and publish it for the people to know. They have done that. Then the second mandate is to remain until the bill is enacted, in order to have any form of consultation that deals with that enactment. That is the second mandate. Now the National Assembly decided to throw it away. Well, then second enactment, the process of enactment was therefore amputated, aborted. So in that regard, then one would see what would they do next, that is, well, how to ensure that they make sure that they unravel the whole process, and then most likely go out of commission. But that is a process. So it is important, because what has happened is not anticipated. Then what should happen after that? Well, when something is rejected and it's a bill, it's like just a piece of paper. It has no legal basis anymore. A bill is just a bill. Unless it's passed into law, then it's no law. So that bill is just a piece of paper now. So what do you do with it? That is the question. Now, if you intend to bring it back, then obviously you must be in consultation with the CRC. because if their work is to come back, then the process of consultation must continue. And if it comes to the National Assembly and the National Assembly finds in their standing orders a way of entertaining it, then obviously the process will still be able to continue as it was originally planned. You can tune it to be able to serve that particular purpose. It can go in the dimension, because you can always, the National Assembly has power to amend laws, to expand on certain areas. The CRC Act can be looked into to make some adjustments here and there.
So
I am saying if we really want to solve the problem, we have to solve it legally. And it's not going to be solved by experts coming and meeting and showing you this draft or that draft. What is important is to know that the stage where it was aborted is the stage where the National Assembly members decided not to review the bill clause by clause. So what is important is to have that to happen, and therefore if there are any experts who can participate in the review process, the National Assembly will be able to invite them to participate in the review process.
What do you make of the role of the National Assembly in the, so-called, if you like, New Gambia? Because this assembly, different. The opinion is divided as to the performance of this National Assembly in this transition. You have MPs that, some people would think that these are rookie MPs. Their very first time of, being at the National Assembly. But what do you make of the National Assembly? Because I've also seen sometimes it would be very rowdy, it will be very tense. Even Al-Fasal at some point clashed with the speaker, for example. There was a moment when this MP, associated comments with you stood up and said, don't quote me. So what do you make of that? The fact that sometimes it can be very tense, but sometimes MPs would argue and people would not be impressed and would say, these people don't understand anything.
Well, that is in all assemblies in the world. What is important is that we have the assembly and its sessions, 4 sessions annually. We also have committee meetings of the National Assembly. I think it is not properly covered due to the National Assembly itself, because what is happening at the committee level is in fact more significant in what is happening at the plenary. And at the committee level, all parties are represented in the committees, and those committees, as I said, sit as High Court. They collect evidence from ministers, from experts, from all areas of life, and they come up with decisions in making laws. I can see the collaboration of all National Assembly members in passing the National Women's Enterprises Fund bill. And because of that, teamwork, we were able to come up with the bill, and I don't see any divergent views on what we intended to do. So that is what Parliament is all about, is coming together to create the laws that will govern the affairs of the state. We also do inquiries, many inquiries. So yes, to a certain extent, the Assembly is performing better than all other assemblies in the past. That's my thinking. That's a subjective opinion, because of the way that we have interpreted the Constitution to be able to empower the Assembly to carry out work that ordinarily people do not know. So there is no doubt that there are some positive elements, but you also have this element where sometimes people take partisan positions or personal positions, interest positions. Well, that is a reality.
That is a reality. Now, what do you make of the time? We are pressed for time, clearly. 2021 is around the corner. And you are saying it's very much possible that the government can come back to the National Assembly. But whether it will succeed this time around, that is a question. The $1 million is a question. But not just that. What do you make of the time? The fact that we are heading into elections and there is a referendum that would have to take place once a bill is enacted. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it is the executive that must see whether it wants to leave a legacy. If it wants a third republic to be its legacy, then it should work very hard to ensure that we find a consensus for this bill to be reconsidered in one form or the other. I use the term reconsidered in a very loose way, but there are mechanisms that would have been pursued to get the bill to come back to Parliament. Now, if it is not interested in building a third republic, I am sure that you have 15 political parties and 14 of them are likely to begin the process of building up their programs and agendas, and I'm sure some will assume certain responsibilities, and parties will also decide, do we have some reforms here and there, but ultimately some will say, well, we will carry out the constitutional reform that should have been carried out by a coalition and that has failed. Well, that may be an election agenda, but we hope it will not get to that. We hope that what has been a collective effort will ultimately find fruition and then eventually gain the dominant position so that we have a third Republican constitution.
Are you confident at all, that when the government returns, this time there will be a breakthrough?
Well, you know, we do not talk about confidence. I'm just saying that the debate should continue outside of the government framework. I particularly intend to continue to engage, to explain the Constitution clause by clause to the population to understand. That is a personal mission, and I will work seriously to ensure that every Gambian knows what is in that Constitution. Then we can gauge whether those who do not want it should be seen to have national interest or not.
What do you make of the interference of development partners? We've seen what has happened, the last minute scramble everywhere. The international diplomatic community issuing a joint statement saying, okay, we want the MPs, we are calling on the MPs to go. And then you have this whole section of the Gambian public which says, you have no business with this is our internal matter. You have no business with that. Do you think they are right at all to put their mouth in what a lot of people will say is a purely internal affair?
Somebody asked me that question. I said, well, when Fatou Bensouda was subjected to the sanctions by the American government, I saw the Gambian government sending some message to request for renunciation of that particular decision. So people must know that we are not living in isolation. We are living in a world, and we want to influence the world. Here and there I do write letters, whether the other side reads it or not, and say what is happening in America should happen in this way or that way. You know, so those are issues that should always be in the fore. You hear what others think about what you are doing. Who can pressure you? Sovereignty resides in you. Nobody can pressure you. But it is important for others also to be able to express their opinions on what is happening in your country, just as you should also be expressing opinion on what is happening in other parts of the world. Otherwise, why should we go and say the Rohingyas, should not be discriminated, in Burma? And even take all those positions and take certain, if you go to the...
So it will become a contradiction there?
Well, as I said, I don't even want to go to that level. I'm simply asserting that in reality, every country has a right to express certain opinions. When you think that something is not going right in a particular country, you express an opinion. It's left to the people of those countries whether they will accept that or not accept that. But we should not be oversensitive when people make those comments. We should just take them for what they are and continue to do what we believe is our national right.
Honorable Salah, you are also a leader of a political party.
Part of the leadership of a political
party.
The Secretary General of a political party.
The Secretary General of a political party. 34 years it's been around. Someone might sit and say, okay, this is a featureless party. What feature is there for DOI? For 34 years, your party has been around. But it has made little headway in terms of garnering the popular, support, if you like. What is really the problem with DOI?
Well, I believe that DOI took a route to real liberation of the country. Because they met the PPP, met the NCP, met the GPP, and survived with what you call PDP. So we were the 5 parties of the Fourth Republic that were affected by the coup of 1994. Where is PPP? Where is NCP? Where is GPP? Where is PDP? Do you know PDP?
They've died.
Do you know PDP? As a young person.
I don't know PDP.
Do you know the leaders of PDP?
Not really.
Okay. So, so that's my answer. Where is Doi?
Doi is around.
You can know who are members of Doi and its leadership. So, in essence, the fact that Doi is still around, when PPP, since 1959, Fourth Republic, up to 1994, but now you can hardly see its futures in the country. NCP was the strongest opposition before the coup of 1994, and you can hardly see its structures. But still, everywhere you go, you hear Doi, you see Doi. It is active. It is having impact. It participated to build NAT. We participated in 6 by-election and won 4. Eventually derailed. Built a united front, which had 11% of the votes to 17% by the UDP. But it was built within a period of, let's say, a few months.
3 months.
And it was able to build that, lead it, and then guide the whole process to have 11% of the votes compared to 17% of the UDP in 2011. And in 2016, to help build a coalition, we took over our country. You say that Doi is insignificant?
But no, we're talking about the ultimate ambitious objective.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is to come to power.
Well, that's another matter. I'm saying precisely the fact that we created the whole architecture that effected 2016 change, that shows the capacity of Doi in strategic thinking and its selflessness that made it possible for that to happen. So what is its future? The future is that we inherited a system that did not create any level ground for multi-party contest, where state power was completely controlled by the executive. And when they came into being in 1986, there was nothing there that enabled an opposition party to be able to rise up and take over a country. Is what we found there will keep an opposition party forever in the opposition until death. But we managed to start the process of reversing that trajectory by focusing on raising the awareness of the people, knowing that that is a protracted struggle. It's not a one-day thing. Then a coup d'etat came just 8 years after the existence of Doi. And what people fail to realize is that from 8 years to 2016, Doi has been under the APRC and AFPRC administration. It is only 8 years that Doi spent its existence out of that realm. So how can Doi as a party grow and develop to take over a system? What we had to do is to craft coalitions after coalition. And what people refuse, and now we did not want to touch on names of parties, but we will. What people fail to appreciate is that during the coup period, it was just Doi that was active. There was a PPP chairman who mentioned something. I've written everything, but it will be sent, part of it will be sent to Standard. But I've decided even to turn that into a book. So I want to finish the book very quickly, a short piece, so that people will know what happened during that period and how we guided the process to restore the constitution, and restore elections. But when we came to election in 1996, PPP NCP, GPP were not allowed to be re-registered. They and PDP could have be re-registered. All were banned, but you had to re-register, which means before you can re-register, then you must accept that you were banned. But we were trying to show that we were not banned. And therefore, our tactic is what we established in 2016. Our tactic was, let's have one independent presidential candidate. All of us will support that independent candidate so that we take over the presidency. And then the political parties will be able to participate in the National Assembly election and take over parliament. Then we would have created a democratic process. But what people are not being told is that PPP, NCP, GPP decided to establish UDP. UDP is a coalition. It started as a coalition. It did not start as a political party. It's just a political party in name, but it was a coalition in reality. And there was a coalition of the UDP and coalition APRC that fought in 1996. Which place can they stand?
So they clearly didn't stand a chance.
It did not stand a chance, and the chance we also provided for them, which would have been successful, is all of us to collaborate. But they never contacted us when they were building their alliance.
Did you reach out to them at all?
I am emphasizing to you that at a material time, it was a time of consultation. We started the process of consultation and we were told that these people were registering a party. Not only that, in 2001, Sheriff Diba had told the whole nation to know that. They went again to build a coalition and select their presidential candidate. They did not even inform Doi. Until Sheriff told them, why is Doi not around? They called us on the telephone. We said, give us 1 day so that we can sit. They said they have no time to sit. Because
how did you feel about that?
We felt nothing. We just felt that.
Of course you should feel something.
No, because we are not interested
in working with them.
In just a coalition for coalition's sake. We were interested in a coalition that will ensure that the Gambian people take ownership of sovereignty. And because they are not interested in that type of coalition, well, obviously they will always elbow Doi out. Because for us, we are not helping anybody for you to become a president or helping anybody for you to rule a country. We are saying let's help each other to empower our people so that we can have a level ground for multi-party contest. That is the same architecture of the coalition. It's 3-year term, so that all parties will be equal in having access to the radio station, so that after the 3 years, we'll have a level ground for multi-party contest. So for us, we have never moved away from that trajectory of ensuring that there is real democracy in the Gambia and the people make their choice so that we can have the undiluted choice of the people. So if you say, where has Doi been? We said, realizing the coalition building. In 1996, we continued to ensure that we will move to, we'll continue to move to ensure change. We focus more on change than building Doi, so that the change will eventually create the level ground for Doi to emerge and take its rightful place in Gambian politics. That was our objective.
That sacrifice, does it make sense at all? You killing or sacrificing your party for the change to happen and then you re-emerge some other time. Does that make sense in politics at all? A lot of people would say politics is about experience, not necessarily about...
Party does not matter. It's the people that matters. Party does not matter, it is people that matters. The objective of the party is to liberate a people. So what will lead to the liberation of the people at a faster pace is what we are committed to. That is why we even supported the candidature of President Barrow. Because if we oppose the candidature, it means that something could have happened.
Now let's talk about the leadership. Since Doi was formed to date, it is the same people. Since when some of us were not born to the time we were born to now, it is the same. It is made up of the same people. And these arguments that are out there, I have even seen recently a journalist raising this argument, and you have started. That is this whole war of ideas, if you like. Yesterday I said war breaks out between Halifa Sallah and Modou Diouf. Some people were like, okay, this is not war. I said, but war can be used in a very in different contexts. War as in the war of ideas or battle of ideas. what do you make of that argument? The fact that, okay, you the likes of you yourself, Honorable Sida Jata, you have gone past your sell-by date. Why don't you step aside and, you know, give a chance to the younger folk?
It's like you hold something that is very heavy.
Yes.
For many years,
yes,
waiting for some people to take it, and it has not been taken. You say, let me just allow it to fall, and then others should take it. You know, that is childish, really. And I think that's what people are saying.
Is that what they're saying?
The fort we have held is not our fault. It's not our interest. It's not our happiness. It is a fort that really saved the Gambia. Is making Gambia to become liberated. And therefore we had to continue. I have said 1994, Doi was just 8 years old. And since 1994, you've seen 1994, parties were banned. And we were struggling. We were arrested. We were detained. We were offered ministerial posts. We didn't accept the ministerial post. But we continued to struggle to restore democracy, to restore the Constitution. That's what we fought for. So we were not fighting for ourselves, we were fighting for the people so that we restore democracy. We won elections in 2002. They said coordinate NAT so that we can build a coalition. We decided to engage in that enterprise and forget our seats again. I've gone to that interview and they were asking me about NAT because they started saying Khalifa Saleh registered NAT, where is NAT? Eventually said, I was not there when NAT was being registered. I was in South Africa in a Pan-African parliamentary meeting. But then I started to engage in damage control and we succeeded in damage control until we built NAT into a real party, into a real force. So you see Doi moving and building. 2011 is the same situation. 2016, you've seen the result. So this is Doi. From NAT period, you don't even hear Doi, you hear NAT. So Doi was subsumed. The same thing with United Front, the same thing with coalition. So the party has been trying to craft ways of effecting change so that power will transfer, and we have succeeded in doing that. That's what should be seen. Are we interested in staying in power indefinitely? Well, to us, we do not see our role in Doi as anything that is related to power. It is seeing a force struggling and sacrificing, because who will have the time to spend all these years to be the Secretary General of a political party when you need to build a home, you need to raise a family, you need to go to university to get your master's and PhD. How many people? So when they say Doi, few people, and you see the number of people Doi has actually trained, who are now scholars everywhere, capacity everywhere, occupying different spaces, and subscribing to the party, but seeing politics in the Gambia that it has not reached the level where they can fully leave everything to join it, because in a political party now, you do not have an administration that pays its Secretary General and pays its officers, not Doi anyway, I don't know about other parties, but for us, our office holders are not paid. They are not entitled to a single butut from the party. So it means that everything is voluntary. Who will be able to do that? So we envisage that now that we have reached the final pinnacle of change, and we are now just left with the Gambian population. Before, we were working on the mindset of the Gambian population to ensure that at least there is change through the ballot box. We have achieved that. So this is the fifth, we are coming to the 5th year. Well, if you want to determine whether Doi is a force or not, well, the next election, I will concede, will be the determinant of whether Doi is a force that is relevant in the Gambia or not. Whatever the result is in the 2021 presidential election and thereafter in National Assembly, well, that is Doi. Because now is the time for us to really build. From 1994 to 2016, we have never been able to build Doi. We have been building coalitions after coalition in order to liberate minds. And of course,
so in essence, what you are trying to say is that in 2021, Doi is standing as an independent political...
There's a force. No, it's now a force. It's a political force in the country, and it's operating, and it is preparing all its groundwork in order to function as a full-fledged political party. And if we look at South Africa, you see from 1961 to 1994, anywhere you talk about, they talk about Nelson Mandela. So you have personalities that they focus on. What does that mean? That the ANC did not have thinkers, did not have people with capacity who could lead? Of course not. Is it, who can say we have diaspora committees, we have national committees, regional committees,
now
we have think tanks, so many people, but we do not go in the public space and these are the this and that and that. Of course you see a secretary general, because the day-to-day work of, just look at the coalition. Halifa Sallah, was it only Halifa Sallah who was in the coalition? Who is now serving Barrow on a different portfolio. So in short, personalities do appear, but it is unfair to reduce parties to personalities. That is the minds of people, not us. We have never talked about this person being a leader of Doi. It is people who say that. For us, we always believe we have a Doi leadership. And if you go further or further, you will see the leadership spreading, and you see people with capacity from all fronts being part of the institution itself.
Now, this battle of ideas you've started or waged against Modou Diouf, when is it going to end? I've seen people say that this is not going to end till the end of time, because Halifa would continue to write and would write and would write, and he will not stop.
But you know,
when is it going to end?
You know, the objective is to help the young. Yes, it appears like a war, but it's helping them to really understand the facts that happened in the past, because it will help them to know how to see politics in the country and see personalities. And if I don't do this, who else will be able to do that? So it's a way of engaging them, because before we see the might of the state, as they said, the sword becomes more powerful than the pen. And that's why you have tyranny and dictatorship. But now we want them to see that even if we were to take over the reins of society, well, people will be very free to express themselves. Why? Because only the pen will exist, the sword will disappear. And now the pen of clarity will subjugate the pen of ignorance. Well, not the type of subjugation that is a war, but subjugation where the person will attain some remorse and say, well, let me rethink again, and work to also gain that pen of clarity so that I can fight my battles better. That is the objective.
But Honorable, are you really sure that it is journalist Modou Diouf who wrote that, or who said that? Because he is saying that he never said such a thing.
Excellent.
Those comments are not his comments. He said he wrote to Foraya for a retraction and an apology. Are you really sure that this came from him?
Well, I'm sure that if that is sent to Foraya and it is not from him, I'm sure he will get a retraction with the apology of the century.
Honorable, I would be lacking in care if I don't take you a little bit back to the draft constitution. I mean, we've seen the Christian community also hold a press conference 2 days ago, and they expressed dismay that at the National Assembly, while all the debates were going on, while all the members of the National Assembly were there was no single mentioning of the Christian community and Gambian Christians and their rights. You are an MP. What do you make of their complaints? Because clearly they are not happy. They say this draft constitution totally disregarded whatever concerns and issues that they had or that they want to be in the new constitution. What do you make of their concern and their cries and their worry as an MP who was there?
Well, what is very clear is that the Gambia was declared an Islamic state by Jammeh in violation of the constitution of the Gambia. And if anybody went to the Supreme Court at that time to look for some declaration regarding the provisions of the constitution, interpretation of the constitution, they would have declared that to be null and void, because it is in violation of the constitution. And therefore Jammeh was just doing it to placate. Gambia was not really an Islamic state, but because, as you can see, Sharia was not operating, all the institutions continued to operate as they were operating. Now, what exists now is Clause 88 of the draft which makes it impossible for an executive to declare a state as a state religion, to complement what is now section 100 and appear as 153, under the draft. So now Parliament cannot and the President cannot. Well, that is the essence. If you look at all the provisions, it expresses that religions are to be respected. People have a right to profess and practice their religion across the board. The problem that I have mentioned, that they have mentioned in terms of the Constitution, is where it mentions Sharia.
Yes.
And then the belief is that it creates inequality, or let's call it inequity. Now, analyzing it, and I will be subjected to any form of questioning by anybody on the subject. I've looked at the subject very well, and I understand it thoroughly. And I've done a background study of it to see why the colonialists even accepted the Cadiz courts to be part of the court system, because they saw the importance of that. What is that? That is to ensure that as far as marriage, inheritance, and divorce, that Muslims are bound by the Sharia and the Sharia code. So why is that in a constitution, to put Sharia in so far as it deals with Muslims regarding marriage, divorce, and inheritance? It is because of how Muslims practice their religion. The way they practice their religion is that when a person dies, under Islam, the male will have, when your father dies, the male will have 2 and the female will have 1. That is established under Islam. Now, if you have a constitution like ours, which also bars discrimination and defines discrimination as any law or act that gives certain advantages to certain people on the basis of gender, on the basis of all, or give disadvantage others on those bases, then it is seen that to be inequality, and therefore you can go to the High Court and make your claim. Let's take the Muslim male and then we take the Muslim female. Suppose now you are given 1 and another person is given 2, and then you go to the High Court, and the High Court rely on that section on discrimination. Then you are from the same mother and father. Why should one have 1 and the other 2? What would be the decision of the High Court? The decision of the High Court will be saying, well, this is inequality. You should be equal. Now, let's take the male. You get a divorce. The person goes and says that I cannot be married to this husband because he's not feeding me, he's not clothing me, he's not doing that. So you go to the High Court, and then the High Court has to look at whether your poverty, your status, whether marriage should be broken on the basis of status. Just because somebody poor, why should you be granted the divorce? So you see, in that sense then, the High Court, based on the clause on discrimination, may reject certain things. So it means that if you do not have in the Constitution a provision that says that in terms of divorce, that it is the Sharia that applies for a Muslim, then it means that the supreme law, which is the Constitution, would not cater for the Muslims. And therefore, the basis of their religion will be uprooted. So therefore, that is why in the Constitution, that is there to protect their religion. It's not protecting an individual, it's protecting their religion, because that is the foundation of their religion. that males must take care of the females, but at the same time, when it comes to sharing, males must have this. That's the logic of the religion. I'm not trying to interpret anything. I'm showing what the Muslim would say. So in that regard, then, if the Christians were to have something similar, and they want that religion to be, that provision to be protected, they can also say, well, this also should be in the Constitution, so that insofar as this, we the Christian, this is what we believe, therefore that is what is going to apply. Then that is of concern. But I've not had any Christian say that there is something that is common to Christians that they want to put in that could be challenged through the Constitution to deny them their religion, or the ethics of their religion, or the fundamentals of their religion, that they want to put in the Constitution to protect that. That's what you call group rights.
The one thing that they are calling for, and they want to be in the Constitutions explicitly and expressly, has to do with the Gambia being a secular
Well,
state.
the Gambia is already a secular state. That's what we have. So to be put it there, there's nothing wrong. No, I understand. I'm explaining. I'm saying that is anybody who is enlightened will have that argument that secular should be put there. Why? Because it is already a secular state. You know, you look at the 1965 Constitution to say that Her Majesty is the executive of the Gambia. Can that be from a religious book? These are mundane institutions and mundane instruments. So a constitution is a mundane instrument. And it is secular. It's not from a sacred book. It is secular. But when you look at the provision in the 1997 Constitution, the attempt was made to add secular there. And when it was added, court proceedings took place to challenge that they put it there without a referendum, because Section 1 is an entering clause. Since it's an entering clause, then you need a referendum to change it. That is why the court agreed that, well, that change was unconstitutional because it did not go through a referendum. And that is why, if you look at the 1997 Constitution, no entering clause was changed, because they felt that by going for a referendum, people would have rejected anything they wanted to change in the entering clauses. Only the non-entering clauses were changed. So that is what an entering clause is all about. Now, when the CRC came, many people said, well, put it there as a secular state. But it became a contradiction where people give all their interpretation of secularism and secular state. Secularism is a philosophy. Secular state is a constitutional knowledge base. It's a constitution. So some people are talking about secularism, and you're bringing back secularism in the Gambia. So as a result, there was so much confusion about secular, word secular, that we will interrogate the CRC. That's why we should go clause by clause and ask CRC, why did not put it there? But one could imagine that if you put secular there and you want that to go to a referendum, when minds have already been polluted that secular means same-sex marriages, this marriage, and all sorts of things, would your constitution pass? Well, the likeliness maybe the constitution would have been rejected by virtue of that. And in that sense, then, we have to ask the CRC, not only that they were considering the legitimacy of a certain word, but also the outcome of a referendum, if certain words were actually put there. So
it was a difficult decision.
Well, I think we should challenge them. I'm not going to be their spokesperson. I will not stand brief for them. But we should go clause by clause to challenge them. But for the Christian community, looking at the current constitution is far superior to the 1997 Constitution, because it's the 1997 Constitution that did not contain that provision that the executive cannot also declare something. But now it is in the draft Constitution.
Honorable Salah, what do you make of the government's handling of the coronavirus crisis vis-a-vis the laws, or even like the regulations around it? What we have seen, there is a mandatory wearing of face mask, but it would appear that is dead in this country. You walk around, you don't see people wearing face masks, social distancing, public gathering. But what we have seen is that the president in the past days has been very busy holding meetings where, I mean, it's in pictures everywhere, where there is no social distancing, people are not wearing face masks, which is mandatory. We have seen people arrested in this country, Honorable, including imams, for violating, for organizing public gatherings, for, taking people to the mosque. And now you have the authority that is there to ensure that the laws around the coronavirus are respected and adhered to. That same government, what do you make of that?
Yes, I think my position is that the Gambian people should begin to see government as their creation and they as the creator. And they must begin to see that what they create should serve their interests. And they have authority to scrutinize what they create. If it serves their interests, they may leave it there. If it does not serve their interests, they have every power to remove that president. They should not allow the behavior of that executive to determine their own behavior. Their own behavior should be determined by knowledge. They must understand that coronavirus is a reality. And COVID-19 is also a reality. And COVID-19 is more dangerous than any other of the coronavirus cultural group. And we have seen the President of the United States, we have seen the Prime Minister of the UK, all being subjected to hospitalization by virtue of COVID-19. So there is nobody on earth, because nobody hated the face mask more than the President of the United States. He would tell journalists, take it off. But now he is putting it on. So therefore, whether the President of the Gambia is putting it on or not putting it on, and is holding meetings and exposing so many people without social distancing, know that that is not supposed to be.
So it's wrong.
Absolutely wrong for any leader at this time to negate social distancing and negate mask wearing. We must ensure that every person knows that the greatest way to protect your life is to put on the mask. The greatest way of protecting your life is sanitization of your hands and ensuring social distancing. That is what is saving lives in many places where it was almost going down. So in essence, we started with that process of raising awareness and creating the possibility of social distancing in markets and sanitization. So if this has been weakened, well, know that life is more under threat, and many people are dying silently, because here people are buried without autopsy. So how many people are really dying with COVID-19 and nobody knows? By virtue of they are not taking to any hospital for any testing.
But why do you think the president is being so irresponsible and being so reckless? As you said, this is a dangerous disease. People are dying. Over 100 people has died in this country because of coronavirus. And yet you have a president, defying all the threats, all the dangers of this disease, and going out there, holding meetings, bringing crowds, people together, spreading the disease.
Well, you are a journalist, you can use terms very freely. I will not use irresponsible, reckless, but I'm saying that the reality is that when you are elected to serve the people, you must have values, and those values must be reflected in your practice. We are selected to ensure under Chapter 1 of the Constitution that power is derived from the people. And that power should be utilized to promote the welfare of the people. And that welfare is life. So clearly, anybody elected to that position should have that at the base of one's mind, that whatever I do must protect life, must preserve life. And if that is not being done, then I am not serving my people according to the best of my ability, as dictated by the times and circumstances. And that is something that should be reflected on right now by the President of the Republic and every National Assembly member, every member of council at this material time who are representatives of the people.
Finally, apart from politics, what does Honorable Halifa Sallah do or not?
Well, for me, it is important before you conclude, it is in your program that I had Mr. Siddharth, Dr. Siddharth Job.
Oh yes, okay. You want
that,
to
you
want to clarify
that I will not leave.
You will not leave that.
Because
Okay,
anybody
fair
who critiques me,
enough. Fair enough.
and I want that to be the apex of your
The
report.
apex of my report.
Then
Fair enough.
I will conclude.
I almost forgot that, but yes, good that you brought it up.
Yes. Can you raise what he said and question about me so that I can clarify it to you?
If I am, he was basically what he was saying that was that you voted the piecemeal changes that were made to the 1990.
I think it's about the local government.
Yes, the local government. Yes,
yes.
That's the piecemeal.
The bill.
Yes,
the bill.
Bill,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. You know. Looking at that, really, the problem with Gambia is that we just talk about politics, but we do not study it to understand it. And at the level of leadership, members of cabinet, presidents, members of the National Assembly, councils, we cannot just talk about politics. We must also focus on what is more fundamental, the rule of law and the Constitution. Under the Constitution, Section 193 says that local government must be based on democratically elected councils with a high degree of autonomy. That's what it says. There should be autonomous institutions. So if we criticize Jammeh and Jawara of having councils that were very much controlled, then we must move to something much better to enable the people to be in charge. Now,
I think what Dr. Siddharth Job was trying to lay out was the inconsistency on your part. What he said was the local government bill you pushed or campaigned for, local government officials to have that autonomy, freedom, and independence of their parties. Why can't you afford that same thing, that same right to the president? For example, in his appointment of his ministers, why would you want to subject that to parliamentary scrutiny? I think that was what he was trying to, lay out.
Okay, well,
the fact that because those that vote against the draft constitution, this is one of the things that they raised, the issue of subjecting the president's ministers to parliamentary scrutiny.
Well, okay, I'm not sure the issue that he raised.
Yes,
as you say,
that
this
is
how it raised.
Yes.
But I don't see the connection between the two, because what was being promoted is not for the councils to be free from scrutiny. I think you know that these councils are subjected to National Assembly scrutiny. Maybe he does not know that.
The local government officials.
Obviously.
Yes.
I think you constantly see them come to the National Assembly, laying their activity reports and financial statements. Yes. They are subjected to National Assembly scrutiny. So I don't understand what is meant by that. Anyway, maybe I will listen to the cassettes and see exactly what he's saying. But that one does not make sense. But what I supported at the National Assembly is not to free the local government authorities from scrutiny, but it's about the political party, the relation between the political party and the council members. That was what was debated. Whether being expelled from a political party should automatically lead to you losing your seat in a council. I said that is not proper. Why? Because the political party selects you to be a candidate. But once you become the chair or you become a councillor, now you are under the control of the electorate, because it's the electorate who puts you there. The political party just selects you, but the electorate who puts you there. Now, if the political party believes that you are not performing then the political party should convince the electorate, because under the Local Government Act, Section 22, the electorate, 50% of them, have the authority to petition the IEC that their elected councillor or the chairperson needs to be removed from office. When that happens, there must be a referendum within that council, and as a result of the referendum, if 50% of registered voters participate in the election, and 60% of those who participate in the election vote for you to be removed, then you are removed. So that's what I said there, that therefore it is already provided in the law for the people to be able to remove any councillor or chairperson. So why should a political party then simply remove a person? How could we equate that with democracy when the people can remove? And if the political party is strong, it just go ahead and mobilize the people for your removal. So that was my position. But in terms of the checks and balances of Parliament, well, this is the debate. I don't want to go very far with the Constitution because I want to handle this in a very advanced way. But if he were to look at Section 95 of the current Constitution, 95 of the current Constitution, National Assembly members can cast a vote of censure against a minister, and the minister will be removed from office. The president can appoint a minister, and by virtue of wrongdoing, the National Assembly can remove the minister by vote of censure.
But don't you think it would be very problematic, and you will present the president a lot of problems when you want to, comprehensively subject his cabinet choices to parliamentary scrutiny? You look at our context and how charged politically and how polarized our politics is. You leave that at the mercy of the National Assembly when you have all these MPs who have their different political agendas, and the president sees someone and appoints a minister only for it to get to the National Assembly and MPs block it just because it doesn't serve their political interests. So it is going to hold the state to run. The state will not move. That is his fear here. I think that is what he was trying to put across.
I think our error here is nobody is saying that what you say is what must be. This is a national document. We could have gone clause by clause, voting for it to move from the second
to the third
reading to committee. Well, after second, it goes to committee.
And then third.
Cannot be refuted in any way. That is what should have been done, so that we can review clause by clause, then these issues can come. I don't want to go too much into the debate as if personally I feel that this has to be. Well, it's left to the nation. For me, I don't see any problem with it. Others may see problem with it. And others are seeing today and the current composition of Parliament, I'm seeing eternity, what should be. I believe that we can have a better system where there is checks and balances. If I were in a position of a head of state, would have appreciated a great deal to appoint somebody and then the person is taken to Parliament and subjected to scrutiny, so that I know that the person that I have appointed is really going to be a special one.
What if it gets there and you have parliamentarians who would just vote?
That person goes and I select somebody else and show that, well, unfortunately.
But there's a risk that will continue forever. People will just be rejecting your candidates just for rejection says, they will not base it on anything.
Then we are going on speculation. We are saying that we have a very irresponsible nation, and therefore we should not govern ourselves. Then we should go back to colonialism. I'm just simply saying.
Back to our final question. What do you do apart from politics?
Yes. Well, essentially, I came into this country with a mission. Mission since 16 and a half years, when I had Stokely Carmichael at Crab Island School, and mentioning the suffering of the African people all over the globe. I made it a mission that it will be my duty to put an end to that suffering, so that day and night I will spend my time searching for knowledge in order to be able to do that. As a person, I enjoy everything that human beings enjoy, but having devoted myself to that, makes it impossible for me to enjoy what people normally enjoy, because I really don't have time to do anything but to work day and night, searching for knowledge, sharing ideas, working actively for the transformation of the society. So I do write, I do create even songs for people to sing. I engage in anything that can add knowledge, that can add value to the life of others. So that is really what I can say about my life, that I'm a prisoner of my mission.
A prisoner of your mission. But finally, I have heard claims that Halifa is an introvert. You will never see Halifa Sallah eat with people outside, for example, in a bar. Very difficult. Some people would say that they've never seen you, come outside, for example, mingle with people, eat with them, play scrap, if you like, with them. Do you do things like that?
Well, I think I've told you that I wish I had time for that. That's a time that I do not have.
But as a politician, do you think that makes sense at all for you?
Well,
sometimes
I think that is being exaggerated to the other angle. I think if you follow our Doi rallies, etc., I think you see us really together, eating together and sharing together. But I'm saying that's extreme. I'm saying in terms of personal life, of sitting and I really don't have time for it. And because I don't have time for it, does not mean that I don't want it. But I do not have time for it. But in terms of sharing, I think people know more than that. The type of life we are living, the community type of life we are living. I believe you see that we build Nyakoi School and train those children to be the most sociable children, on earth. I believe that you see our community here, how people live with our members everywhere. I believe that I wish I could have holidays and leaves and go to the beach to enjoy myself. It's just that I do not have it, and I accept to be the prisoner of my mission.
Fair enough. Honorable Halifa Sallah, thank you very much for speaking to the Father Network. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the Honorable Halifa Sallah, the National Assembly member for Serekunda and Secretary General of DOI, speaking to us there. That will bring us to the end of this interview. Thank you for being there. Until next time. Hello there, my name is Lamin Jah.
Imagine owning a home or a service plot, enjoying the sunrise and sunset from a beautiful garden, morning hugs and beautiful moments with your loved ones, the never-ending stories, beautiful memories that will last a lifetime, making and sharing great moments with family and friends. You can turn this into a reality. All you need is a tough home.